Motherhood, but not quite as we imagine. Thought-provoking, refreshing, straightforward, sometimes taboo, often seemingly ordinary, but always honest. Welcome to School for Mothers, opening conversations we all need to have, exploring ways in which you can be fulfilled as a woman, once a mother. Now here is your host, mother of 10, Danusha Melina Durban.
Hello and welcome back to episode 23 of the School for Mothers podcast. I'm Danusha Melina Durban, your host. Now, before I say anything else, I want to say a huge thank you to you, our listeners, because in the last few weeks, we've been at the top of the iTunes Business and Careers podcast charts. I mean, yes, I'm so excited by this. It's amazing to see our downloads and subscribers going up and up and up, and to pretty well, hit the charts. I mean, at number one is fan-bloody-tastic. It really is. Most of all, it's humbling to hear from so many of you about the impact of the School for Mothers conversations. Thank you again for your loyal listening. We were absolutely shocked and very, very thrilled. Thank you. Now, on to episode 23, entitled Star, with my special guest, Helen Packham. Now, Helen is a leadership and business coach, and she helps entrepreneurs stand out and get recognised as experts and win more business. Now, who doesn't want that, eh? She uses her 15 years experience in corporate leadership development, as well as her own personal journey as a TEDx speaker and curator of live events, to help business owners connect with their clients and customers in genuine, authentic ways, all using the power of story. This is very, very exciting, isn't it? Because I think, story is at the heart of so much in business, and life, of course. Our narrative, what we make of our journey, really important. I'm really looking forward to discussing with Helen how she went from being a new mother with a corporate career, this is going to sound familiar, I think, to many listeners, to moving into being an entrepreneur. If you haven't seen Helen's killer TEDx talk called The Impact of Motherhood on Confidence and Career, be sure to go and watch it. You'll find the link in the show notes over on our website, and that's at www.schoolformothers.com/podcast. You'll find it there. Now, before Helen joins me, a quick reminder to look out for our new Sunday Supplements episodes. These are released every other Sunday. These new episodes focus on hacks, strategies and tips to improve our lives. Who wants that? We all do. I know we do. It's that extra help that us busy mamas need. Now, our next Sunday supplement will be focusing on sleep. Here at School for Mothers, we absolutely know what sleep challenges bring. It's obvious, have 10 children, going to have had lots of sleep issues. And I'm not talking about the children, I'm talking about us women, the mums. How do we actually get back to sleep? How do we get enough sleep? Those kinds of things. So there are oodles of sleep issues, aren't there? I'm going to be in the company of a sleep expert who will bring us practical solutions to help us get a better night's sleep. Hope you'll tune into that one. I won't keep you waiting any longer. Let's dive into my conversation with Helen Packham. I'm a great fan of TED Talks, and there's so many millions of them. There's awesome, impactful TED Talks on every subject that we could ever wish to listen to and watch. And today's guest is one of my favourite TEDx speakers, and there's a very, very good reason that today's episode and this week's episode is called Star. Because Helen Packham and her motherhood talk, wow, if you haven't watched it, you really have got to go and see this, because she just cracks open the experience of moving from careers, having a life where you're kind of focused. Actually, I'll shut up telling you what she says on it, because I think you should just go and watch it, and she's sure to tell us a little bit about it, much better than I can. So it's lovely to have you here, Helen. Really, really so excited for our conversation on Star.
Thank you so much, Danusha. I'm so honoured to be here.
Yeah, tell us a bit about what brought you to the TEDx stage. How did that happen?
Well, the first thing I think is important to say, I never expected it to happen. I never planned that to happen. But if we were to think about where, because it kind of started, was with my career. So my background is in corporate leadership development and executive coaching. I got into that career quite early. I was very lucky to sort of find my calling straight out of college. And I got a fab job at Virgin Atlantic and became a coach, and really knew that people diversity and behavioural diversity was something that I was incredibly interested in and passionate about. And so I climbed the ladder into leadership development and delivered lots of training programs and coached the senior leaders and sort of worked my way up to the board, which was quite scary, really. I was the only female pretty much coaching a group of men. There weren't any females on the board. And so by the time I was 30, I was doing that sort of stuff, and I was sort of heading up the learning and development strategy in a business division of around 3,000 people. And when I think back on that, there was a confidence there. There was a sense of self-knowing, but it was kind of like an armor, I guess, that I had. And so when I got married and had my first child, I skipped off on maternity leave, waved them behind, bye-bye, see you later. And I just had no clue what was going to happen. I am someone who likes to control outcomes. I like to plan. I like to know what's happening. That's just who I am. And so I'd really researched a lot into parenthood and thought I had it fast. Yay! But clearly that didn't happen. So my daughter had health issues when she was born. She didn't sleep at all, and she was undiagnosed for a year. And in that year, it all became very hard. I completely lost who I was. It feels like I became untethered because I was so sure of who I was before. And it was like the rug had been pulled from underneath me. And I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder due to the sleep deprivation and also just feeling completely out of my depth. And so when I returned to work a year later, I just felt like a completely different person that just wasn't capable or able to operate at the level that I'd been operating at before I left. And it really showed because I was so unsure, timid, self-conscious, anxious, and I just felt like a fraud. And one thing led to the other. Of course, my manager noticed all of this. It really impacted on my performance. And so it all came to a head, and I left. I ran away. I ran away from it all, and I vowed to myself. So my career was built on standing up in front of people pretty much on a daily basis, training them, coaching them, speaking, giving presentations to rooms full of people. I was always nervous doing that, but it was an excited type of nervous. But when I left, I vowed that I would never do that again. The thought of standing up in front of just a few people made me feel physically sick and anxious. And it was almost like, I've got to keep safe. I've got to stay small. Went into hiding, stayed very close to home, didn't see my friends. Did start up a business, but it was like basically a business where I didn't have to leave the house.
Great solution.
Yeah. Very, just very, very sort of limited myself to protect myself. And that felt safe, but deep down, I knew that it wasn't right. I knew because there was this sort of calling within me that would sort of tap for my attention every now and again, and I'd just stuff it back down again. So after the birth of my second child, things really, really took a toll. He also had health issues. Our marriage was hugely impacted, and my husband moved out shortly after he was born, and he did move back in after about 3 months, but that period really forced me to look at what happened. I had no choice, really, facing life as a single parent with a newborn and a 3-year-old. I started listening to the voice that had been calling to my attention, and I started a journey, and that was around 3 years ago now that I decided to become self-aware and make choices. And I went through therapy, went through cognitive behavioural therapy. I got hugely into my own personal development, and things just started to change. I made a vow to myself that I'd never stand up in front of a room full of people before, but all of a sudden I had new values and new drivers, and courage was the highest driver. And I knew that I had to prove to myself that I could stand up. So I put a vision board together, and in the middle of that vision board, I put the 3 red letters, TED, because I love TED. I've always loved TED Talks. And I thought, all right, I'm going to prove to myself that I can do this. And 8 months later, I managed to make that happen with only 48 hours notice to actually do the talk. I had applied and I got turned down, but then they called me 2 days before and said, do you want in? And I was like, oh my goodness.
Oh my God. I mean, TED Talk applications are usually a very big, long process, aren't they? I mean, I've consulted and coached, TED Talk speakers. So it's like I know the inside of this process pretty well. And 48 hours, whatever happens.
Well, I'd applied and they were full.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd obviously done, I don't know what I'd done, but I'd done something that made them remember me.
Yeah.
So when somebody dropped out 48 hours before because they were pregnant and they couldn't fly,
oh, right.
That's when they said, well, we thought of you, but we need to put it to a committee vote. So actually 24 hours later, I still hadn't done anything with my talk because I was just too nervous to even think. But they said, you're in. And I had to go down for sound check that day to the Brighton Dome. Beautiful, beautiful building, huge,
stunning
auditorium, stand out on that stage. And then I pulled a talk together in that time. And then on the day itself, I was second to last and I had to sit in the audience all day watching these amazing speakers who've had months to prepare. And I was just before Jordan from Rizzle Kicks. He was finishing off the day. And he was backstage and he talked me down off a ledge, as well as the sound guy, because I was just drowning in fear. And he was awesome. I'll never forget the conversation I had with him. And then I just walked out into the lights and did it. And it was just the best thing. It was the best feeling ever.
Wow. What a journey from, career certainty. In a sense, I can hear such a solidity around your armoured sense of self, through to that kind of loss of self. And wow, I mean, maybe this word's the wrong one, but I feel a kind of disintegration and a reshaping of who you are. And through that journey of CBT and self-development and consciousness and awareness and, kids obviously are pivotal to the whole thing, aren't they? Because that shaking, I mean, it's a massive volcanic shaking of our identity that happens when we have kids. We might think we've got it handled when we have one. We might, if we're lucky, and some of us don't. And then we have a second and it's like rocked again and then rocked again. And it's a redesign of self, I think. And your story is such an incredible case study of actually what we hear happens to career women. It really is.
Yeah. So many people I've spoken to, which was the great thing about doing it, because I wanted to help, just if I could help one person with the talk, then I knew that would be great. And the response I got was just so wonderful. So many women who said, I felt the same. I feel the same. Thank you so much. And even men who aren't parents could relate to that loss of self in some way through a life change, a life event that just sort of pulls the rug from underneath you and you rebuild. As you say, it's like a disintegration, a rebuild, a rebirth. For me, it felt like this journey was unbecoming though. So I felt like I'd built up this armor since childhood, like we all do. And I was putting out something really that wasn't me at all. And so the quote that carried me through at this time was, maybe the journey isn't about becoming anything. It is about unbecoming everything that isn't really you, so you can be who you were meant to be in the first place.
Yes.
That was the guiding voice at the beginning, and still is. I love that quote.
Yeah, it's a fab quote. As you say, we have layers and layers and layers of identity that we think serves us, and until something pretty radical or drastic or traumatic happens, we don't really have the opportunity to unravel it or take it apart, or it's taken apart for us. It's not always that we take it apart, is it? It's like something horrific happens and that seems in the moment horrific, but actually becomes the very making of us.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's it. How long ago was your TED Talk?
It was October 2016.
So what's happened since?
Yeah, well, but I can't believe really what's happened since. That was a huge turning point for me, making that choice and following courage and doing that and taking the steps to make that happen.
Well, you could have said no, couldn't you? You could have said, you've only given me 24 hours and, I can't do justice to myself, or, I'm not going to shine like I want to, and therefore come back to me next year. You could have done.
Yeah.
What made you not do that though, Helen?
The voice inside. Just saying, you've got to do this. It was just almost like there was no other option. I remember saying to Toby Moore, who is the curator at TEDx, because obviously I had I had to sort out childcare. My
Yes.
son was very small and my daughter was at nursery. I just said, I am going to make this happen. Just remember saying that to him. I was so sure. But since then, what I realized was that the skills that I'd built up in my corporate career were actually useful to people, because a lot of people came up to me and said, how did you manage to do that with 24 hours notice? And what I'd done is I'd drawn on all my skills and experience from training and coaching people and delivering talks and using storytelling and helping people to use stories when delivering messages. And all of those are wonderful things that I used to get so immersed in my career. And that's what I'd drawn on without even thinking about it. But somebody said to me, you've got something there that other people need. And so I started to think about how I could serve people in this way. And I started to evolve a business where I took my leadership development experience from the corporate world and put it into the entrepreneurial world. And it's a very different place, but it's still all about leadership. And it's a different type of leadership, but sharing a message and making an impact through words and communication and stories is still, very, very important for entrepreneurs, small business owners who want to stand out. So I started to kind of cultivate a few programs. And one of the first programs I put on was called Standout Speaker. And I literally just took my experience and I put it into a 6-week program, and it sold out.
Wow.
And it did really, really well. And I realized that people need this. They need help. They've got stories, they've got journeys, they've got things that they are passionate about that they want to share with other people through speaking. And I wanted to help as many people as possible get confident to stand in that spotlight and share that message and make a big impact with their story and their words. So Standout Speaker was kind of the start of that, really. And I ran it twice last year. And then whilst I was doing that, I started to develop my one-to-one programs. And really, because thought leadership is another area that I used to help people with within the corporate world. And again, I noticed that entrepreneurs really, to stand out in a kind of saturated market of coaches and consultants, sharing your ideas with courage and being known for your ideas and your opinions is really important.
Yeah.
It helps you get recognized as an expert and authority in what you do. So I started to develop a program around helping people to stand out with their ideas through thought leadership. And again, that went very well. And I started helping people one-to-one in that area. And then I decided to do the biggest thing I could do, and I put on my own conference.
Yes.
Which was a completely impulsive decision. I saw Anne Daniels, the polar explorer, do a talk in January last year at a conference, and she blew me away. The first lady to walk to the North and South Poles. Incredible story. I was just blown away. I bounded up to her afterwards and said, I'm putting on a conference and I'd like you to speak at it. And I hadn't even thought about the conference.
Yes.
It happened because she said yes.
Exactly.
And so I had sort of 5 months to make that happen, which I did. And my first conference took place in June last year in Brighton, and it was awesome. And it's happening again this year.
Amazing.
Yes.
So you've got a bit more time to get it together,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from the last experience. I'm actually doing 2 live events this year. So it's really gone to a place where it's just, I absolutely love face-to-face events and really getting in front of, the people that maybe you've been building relationships online with for years and years and years, and connecting with those people. And when I did that last year, it was just incredible. The energy in the room was like palpable. It was quite something. So I'm really hooked on life.
Yeah, that in real life experience is electric, isn't it? Compared with, that kind of building of relationship online is absolutely brilliant. And it's, thank God we have that.
Yes.
There's nothing quite like the power of being in person and really being with the energy of somebody and truly seeing them. It's a different thing, and it builds on top of that wonderful experience online, or hopefully wonderful experience. Yeah. I wondered, as you were talking about kind of standing out and being in the spotlight, and I wondered what you think. I mean, you predominantly work with women, don't you?
I do. I'm actually starting to work with men a lot more now, but still.
Yeah, I thought you must be.
The majority of people I work with are women, yes.
Yeah. I was wondering what the unique challenges are, really. I'd love your take on why is it that women particularly and mothers maybe even more so. I don't know. I'm putting it out there. What's the challenge for us for standing out and being in that center of stage and having the spotlight like really shine on us and have us lit up? Why do we kind of shy away from that? Even the most confident thought leader, I work with them, you know, they're like, oh, no, not me. Please, no, not me. Let someone else go in the center stage.
Yeah.
What's this about?
Done a lot of thinking around this for myself, for my clients. And I delivered a talk recently about courage, and I talked about shame and the human emotion of shame and why we have it from an evolutionary perspective. And I think shame is kind of at the base of it, because shame has two voices. And one is, who do you think you are? And the other is, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And these two voices, I think, particularly for women, when we're thinking about being visible and sharing a story or sharing a message in a public way, these two voices become quite loud. And there's lots of things around that. You know, people talk about imposter syndrome, comparison. And I think for women, we're just so much more conscious of these feelings and emotions. We're so much more sensitive and tuned into them. And of course, we always have a choice. We always have a choice of what we listen to and what we can do. And a lot of the things I do with my clients is actually work on this at a sort of deeper level. So we look at what these blockers are, and we look at what's underpinning these feelings and these thoughts and these emotions. And obviously, pretty much every single time, it's not actually true. It's not a belief that's true at all. So shining light on it and realizing that there's nothing actually pinning that up.
It's made up.
Yes, it's completely made up.
It's a made up story.
It's a made up story from something or somewhere. You know, a lot of the time I speak to women, and it's at school that things have happened, that, you know, in different peer groups, or somebody said something to them and they've created a belief. Or of course, you know, in childhood as well. I'm not a counsellor by any stretch. I am a coach, and I'm solutions focused. But sometimes we explore, you know, what has got you here to get you there. And, you know, when you shine a light on it and you realise there's nothing holding it up, it's the first step to really dissolving those beliefs and rewiring new ones. And also understanding that you're unique. Everybody is unique, particularly if you have a story. A lot of women say to me, oh, but nobody will want to hear my story. It's not original. It's not tragic. And the beauty of it is that everybody's story is unique to them. Like my story, I stood up on the stage and I told an ordinary tale in the grand scheme of things. The things that I spoke about happened to so many people. And yet,
but isn't that the power of it, Helen?
That was the power of it.
Yeah, it's relatable. You know, you didn't stand up, and it would be like me standing up and telling the story in a TEDx of having 10 children, being the mother of 10 children, which, by the way, I'm not going to do, because actually that's such a specific experience that and when I keynote speak, I never tell that story as the core message, because after all, who else would have 10 children? I mean, there's a few of us, but not many. So, you know, actually in the world, of course, there's a lot, but I'm talking about, you know, let's say the developed world, not too many. So yeah, what I love about your talk is that it is massively accessible. Like, you are us, you know, that's it. You know, your story it's got all the common threads. That's why I said it's a case study. It hit the spot so brilliantly. I had no idea you only had 24 hours to throw it together. I mean, I'm assuming you had to throw it together. I would be.
Yeah, literally, you know, I don't know where I pulled it from, but.
Well, you pulled it from your lived experience and your courage, didn't you? Because courage keeps coming up as the core thing that if you couldn't have pulled that off as you did, in the manner in which you did, with the clarity that you did, if you hadn't had the courage to mine for the information through the very experience of what sounds like some negative stuff, you know, quite hard won redefinition of self. And that doesn't come by not actually looking at yourself, and you don't wake up and have it. You actually have to do hard work for that.
Oh, yes.
And so that courage seems to just go through the courage to stand up, the courage to come up with, hey, I've got a conference. I plucked out of thin air. But because you were so in tune with Anne's, a magnificent story, that you knew, you followed that intuition, that gut, that you had to do it.
Absolutely.
So you didn't stop yourself.
Yes. I remember my first job at Virgin, my first ever staff do. We were invited, I was ever so lucky, we were invited to Richard Branson's house in Oxford.
Nice.
And he put on a big do, and we could camp in his field, and we had a concert in the evening. I could not believe my luck, honestly. I was 18 years old.
That's great.
out he came, and he delivered this speech. It was the first time I'd seen someone stand up and deliver a talk. And of course, it's always stuck with me. And I remember the last thing he said at the end of that talk were, remember, if your dreams don't scare you, they aren't big enough.
Yes.
At the time, obviously, it did resonate with me, but it only really resonated more in the last few years when I knew that I had to follow courage every day. I had to, it's my North Star.
Yes.
If I'm following courage, I'm doing the right thing. I'm moving towards courage, I'm doing the right thing. Does it scare me? Then I'm doing the right thing. And it seems to be working and serving me well.
But isn't it antithetical to really the way that we're kind of taught to do things? Because actually we're taught to seek comfort, to seek stability. And actually, by the way, I don't collapse stability and uncomfortable. I don't put them together. So if you're going the courageous way, I don't necessarily think that that's going to be unstable. Quite the opposite. I think it can be, it'll actually take you closer to an inner stability than ever.
Okay.
But I know that there's stories about this that are just out there that, take tiny, tiny steps. So what do you call courage? What do your courageous steps look like?
It's evolved quite a lot now, actually. But I guess there's a few mantras around it. So do it scared is one. Because what I've realised is that I will always live with anxiety. I always have done, and it was exacerbated after having my children, and it hasn't gone away, and I haven't cured it, and I've come to accept that it's just something that comes and goes, and I know how to manage that now. So anxiety will always play a part in my life, and it will always play a part in all of our lives. It's how we respond to it, and it's how we use it. So courage, taking courageous steps forward, is knowing that you're going to be scared, but you do it scared. You do it scared anyway, because on the other side of that fear is a hell of a lot of fun. And just knowing that helps me move forward. And when I'm talking to people about this, helps them too. So that's one thing, doing it scared. The other thing is saying yes and figuring it out later.
That's such an important one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's knowing, if you're listening to yourself, and this has been a very, very hard thing for me because I was numbing out for many, many years. I was pushing all the easy buttons and numbing out and eating lots of coffee and walnut cake, binge watching Netflix, just doing anything to avoid my feelings. But when I started listening, really listening and tuning in, that was when I started to feel more confident about being courageous, because you can trust that voice, that intuition inside you. That's the thing that you can trust the most. And so when you hear that voice inside, it's just a feeling, isn't it? It's like a feeling when you know something. I now follow that and I say yes. And then I know that I will figure it out. My organisation skills will come together. I'll find a way. So recently I've just done this with another event that I'm collaborating with 5 other entrepreneurs in London. It's a huge event. It's got firewalking and everything, Janusha.
Oh my gosh, how lovely.
But that was another thing. It was at Christmas. I spoke to some of the guys about it, and they were like, do you want in? And I just said yes. And then I just knew I would figure it all out. So that's, I think, a really important thing, because we can't plan everything out. If we plan too much, we just don't take action.
Don't you think that that's what you've just described is quite different than the woman that you were, the woman that had to control outcomes and plan and, really like make it, that smacks for me of kind of safety. And when we try to control outcomes, we're really never going to fire on all cylinders, because actually when we don't control outcomes, wow, the potential is exponentially larger. So I just wanted to point to right at the top of our conversation, you described a woman so very different.
That's interesting, actually. I've never sort of made that conscious link. But what I will say is, so with anxiety in particular, because I was quite an anxious child.
Yeah.
And then I've had two sort of running themes throughout my sort of early life. In my 20s, I was very hedonistic. I am hedonistic.
What do you mean by that one?
I guess I
spell it out for us.
I love to have a good time. I love to take risks.
Yeah.
I love, music and parties and going a bit crazy. And I certainly did that in my 20s. But that was sort of quite a dichotomy with my work life, which was very controlled. I had to know what I was doing. I had to plan everything. So I think what's happened now is I've really just let that kind of playful, hedonistic streak take over, because that is me. And that complements the kind of just do it now and figure it out later type of mantra.
Yeah. Oh, but what if you go wild? Like, what I'm wondering about is that question in the head that goes, but say if I really just go full out, where's my limit? How'd you play with that one?
You know what? That's something I'm exploring at the moment.
Yeah.
Just to see how far I go. Not in a dangerous sense or just because
you need to, we kind of, as human beings, we need to find where our boundaries are, don't we?
We do.
I had this with alcohol, for instance, because I love Prosecco or champagne. So I'm not a drinker. I know that sounds funny, but I came to alcohol very late in my life, and I'm talking like 29, in the late 20s.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't interested in alcohol at all. I mean, I had some alcohol, but very, just very sparingly. And I like bubbles. That's it. I just like bubbles.
Me too.
And so I noticed that I was shaming myself for drinking, because actually my inner self isn't a drinker. Like my identity really isn't a drinker. But there's a piece of me, and I've done some work around this. It's like there's a piece of me that just really likes the celebratory part of drinking, particularly around bubbles. And so it's wrapped up in that potty girl that I am. And I don't want to say goodbye to her. And I've tried all sorts of things like ginger ale, and actually I can give up drink. That's not the issue. It's just something that it's there for me. It's quite powerful. Not in an out of control sense, but that's where I'm leading. I was like, well, where is my boundary? What would happen if I said, Danusha, drink as much as you like. Like, go for it, girl. Just, you want 3 bottles? Drink it. There's a very big power in going like anything. Just see where you go. And of course, what happens when we swing full out and give ourselves permission, we naturally find our way, don't we? Because, of course I didn't drink 3 bottles. Nothing like it. I mean, I'd be on my back. I'd be sick. I couldn't function. So actually I found my natural place of, this is nice, to this is awful, to I'll never do that again.
Yeah.
And so
you found your boundary.
Exactly. And we have to do that. And our boundaries are different for, each one of us, aren't they? And so your hedonism and party spirit, I want to know what you're going to be, what you're going to be trying out to see where yours is, so that you calibrate.
I'm so excited, really, because I'm single now, and I've put my vision board together for this year, and it's about adventures. And
that's the word I use, by the way, adventures.
And so, for example, if I am able to, which I want to make it happen, I am hopefully going to be going on a flashback adventure. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's for people in their 30s and 40s who want to go on a more adventurous trips, places like climbing mountains and trekking, as a group. So
great fun.
Yeah, so that's like one thing. I want to go somewhere I've never been before.
With new people, presumably.
Yeah,
strangers.
Yeah, complete strangers. That's just one example. And there's so many other things that I'm just really stepping into it. I just feel like I'm kind of stepping into this expanded version of myself. That might sound a bit weird, but that's how it feels. And
bigger self, bigger, shinier star. louder voice.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So, big goals, big dreams, work-wise, absolutely, but also in my life. Of course, cherished memories with my children. But for me, as a woman in my own right, there's all sorts of things that, I can't wait to explore. And
stop tantalizing us. Tell us some more. Come on. I like the flashbacks. That's nice. Give us some more. Come on. We might like them too.
Well, I guess another thing is writing my book.
Uh-huh.
So I've stalled on it for such a long time, and I finally feel like now is the time. So I'm writing that. I started writing that, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah.
And I think probably what held me back was those two voices. Who do you think you are to write a book? But now I'm just, really looking forward to exploring that in terms of just letting it flow and come out and seeing where that takes me as well. So yeah, that's another thing.
So presumably that's non-fiction.
It is. It's a business-focused book. It did actually start very much around my journey and the steps I took to go from the kind of hiding housewife to the TEDx speaker. That was the book, but it's evolved now. I feel like I'm in a different place, and there are other things that I want to talk about. So that's what the shift has sort of created. And I know, okay, now I can start writing this book.
Yeah, because you've stepped into your thought leadership yourself, haven't you?
Yes, and so it's focused around that. I've got a framework that I use with my clients called 360 Leadership, and it's my version of being an authentic thought leader. And there's different facets to it, and they all combine to help entrepreneurial leaders show up as them in the most natural way as possible, and that is authentic and that taps into their unique strengths and talents. And so the book will focus on that. Yeah.
It's a book that's needed.
Yeah. And also lots of fun with my friends, meeting new people, going awesome places with my friends, having loads of fun, going to concerts. I'm back into my music again. I used to be a DJ, so I'm learning to DJ again.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that type of stuff.
How do you find time to keep deep your relationship with your girlfriends, your friends?
It is tricky because, obviously, I'm with my children 90% of the time. And so they're very sweet and they come over to me a lot.
How old are your children, by the way, now?
3 and 6.
Yeah.
So
nice ages.
I'm in a lot, but my girlfriends come over in the evenings, and we also do stuff together at the weekends that I'm with my children. So last weekend gone, had some friends over with their children. We went out for walks and things like that. So that's awesome. And I feel very lucky to have friends like that.
Do you think there's a difference between partnered up friends with children and single friends? Because it's something that I really find that I've got oodles of friends that in the week, if they're not exhausted, like all, many, many mothers who are working or not working out of the home, it's tough. But nevertheless, the week's fine, but weekends can be I find really low on people to meet up with. Yeah. I just do. So,
I do find that. I'm just thinking about it, Danisha. I don't know. I haven't met up with any other single parents with my kids, which is silly, isn't it?
Well, I think it's an isolating point. So
yes,
I really experienced it. So last Saturday, my kids went with me, and I was really lucky. I had this amazing chunk of time in the day just for me. Okay, so I went to the laundrette because it's all very glamorous over here, pouring with rain and 3 loads of washing. And it's like, okay, I don't have the kids, so I'll go do the laundrette, go to a charity shop while it's drying, and, blah, blah, blah. And then I was out on the streets. It sounds funny, but, milling about on the streets, and everybody was couples. Now, of course, I'm fully aware that it's what you focus on is what expands.
Yes.
I get this. It's mindset. So I then start looking for, okay, so where are the single mums? Where are the women on their own? I went to a coffee shop. I was literally the only person on her own. I was like, oh, no, this is just too much. I remember why I don't go out on a Saturday very much. And actually, it affected me. It just did. And that day, in that moment, it somewhat marred my experience of being on my own. And I love my own company. So It's not that I need to be around people. It was just simply a recognition of, I really need to be with more single mums, particularly at the weekend. Like sharing, I always cook a roast. Yeah. I'd love to say, hey, come and share a roast. Share some time, because weekends are a particular moment. I'm really, really finding it. So,
well, let's definitely do that.
Yeah, exactly. We don't happen to live that far away from each other. I mean, some of the School for Mothers guests are, in Australia or, all around the world. We happen to live within, distance of each other. So yes, I think that would be amazing. And it's something because I've suddenly become aware of it, I want to make it different rather than scurry into a slightly downward spiral about it and feel all upset about it, because actually I'm not upset about it. I'm not upset about being a solo mum. It's just those moments. So yeah, we'll do something about it. Eh?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
My friend said to me, take yourself off for a walk on the South Downs, go to the cinema on your own and book in a treatment. So one weekend I actually did that. I did all of that. I went to the cinema on my own, and actually it was awesome.
Yeah, it's very freeing. It really is. And then I think weekend after weekend after weekend, it's when you've cracked that, wow, I can go in a restaurant, sit, have a wonderful meal and love the experience, which I do. It's then, and there's a nice counterbalance to having community with people who understand and are living a similar lifestyle. I think that's what it is. It's very much a balance that's important. So yeah, I'm glad we talked about that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's funny. So I didn't know you were single. See, before.
Actually.
Well, we're, it's not hello. I happen to be a single mother. We're so focused on, I guess, our impact and our, what we're up to in the world, that's certainly not the kind of primary identity for me. And I can hear it's not for you. No, I think it's a very powerful place to be. And yeah, I'm hoping as we expand the show, which we are in March, by the way, there's been some exciting expansions. That's a funny word, but some new work that we're doing, some deeper work. I definitely want to dive into single motherhood and how society holds us, and how there are loads of myths about it that's just not true. It's just, but we kind of get a bit categorized, I think. There's some wonderful stereotypes of single mothers that are, I'm being ironic, obviously, or is it sarcastic? Yeah, they're not so wonderful. And so many of us defy those. We don't sit in those stereotypes at all.
No.
And it does us a disservice, I think. So just like some conversation about it. Yeah. There's a wonderful woman in the States called Emma Johnson, and all of her work is for single mothers. And I've forgotten what, I think she might be single rich mummy or something like that, but it certainly involves the wealth element. And so her work is around equipping single mothers to be, financially robust, solid. Okay. It's really good, really good. Yeah, I like her work very much. I just sometimes I do think for Emma, say if she meets somebody, how's she going to do that with her business? That's my entrepreneurial head on. Yes. It's like, oh no. And I do sometimes think that about businesses that are based on a specific feeling, if you like.
Oh yes. It's a trap, I think, that a lot of people fall into. I did at the beginning of my journey. I was a transformational coach because I wanted to help people with exactly what I've been through. But of course that changed.
Yeah.
And so I had to kind of set my roots down and really tap back into my real expertise.
Yes.
And so, yes, I do advise anybody who may be feeling that at the moment, like feeling a bit untethered to your niche or what you do, always go back to your expertise. Always go back to the thing that you are the best at.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than tethered around an experience that actually may well be pointing you to your deeper expertise, but actually isn't the deeper one. So such as businesses that are built around anxiety or depression or, like, for instance, even domestic abuse. Yeah. Actually, when you move from that, then that can destabilize that business because you can't constantly be talking about that.
No.
I think it's a really interesting point, and it's an interesting point about branding. Oh, I love your clock.
Oh, no.
No, I love it. Listen, I recorded an episode. Oh, I love it.
Get to the door.
Is it a post person? Go do it. It's
Sorry,
fine.
hang on a second.
Is it from Amazon?
It is. I'm so sorry.
It's from Amazon. Yes. Yes. You see? Not going to make you tell us what it is. That might be awful. But, okay. So, yes, I was saying that the other day, my 6-year-old came in and he really, really wanted me. And he was on the brink of a meltdown. You know, he has sometimes regulation issues. And depending, really. He regulates beautifully most of the time. But this time I was in the middle of a podcast recording. And actually I was on my own in the house. And he was doing beautifully in the room beside me until he wasn't. And so I had to cut it short and say, sorry, be back in a minute. And then when we got back on, my guest had somebody deliver something from Amazon. So it's like, okay, so this and banging doors and all sorts of things.
Sorry.
It's like, okay, so we're doing real life, which is exactly what we do on this show. It's fun. It's what it's, real. So, okay. Just before we go, What is your number one tip, your number one piece of solid advice to anyone who really wants to find their courage and shine and be a star?
My number one piece of advice is to start with your story.
Yes.
And it forms the base of absolutely all of it. It doesn't have to be your life story. But it's the story that you want to tell that is significant to why you stand where you do today and what you want to do as a result of that journey. And it doesn't have to be directly related to your business. It can be something that you are passionate about. My story isn't directly related to my business, but that's still my story. And I shared that in that way. So my biggest piece of advice is if you want to find your courage and your knowing and your clarity and you want to really move forward in your business, start with getting really clear on it. Write it out or talk it out. Video yourself talking it out or write it out. Get it out on paper. And that's the start of something great because so much comes out of that.
Oh, I love, love, love this advice of yours. It really is that your unique story, your authentic voice, but have that, like really get it out in whatever manner really works for you, isn't it? Like dictate it. Tell it like a story. Actually, like once upon a time, there was this little girl or this woman who, whatever works for you, draw it out as a comic strip. It doesn't really matter. Paint it. It's like get the story out of you and then you can build from there. Oh, it's lovely. Thank you. Yeah. I've adored our conversation. I really have, Helen.
Me too, Danisha. It's been
Which
wonderful.
kind of roast do you want?
Oh, lamb.
Yeah, lamb. Oh, I'll have to look that up because I never cooked lamb. That's good.
Okay.
No, I'll do it. No, I'll do it. I would like to expand my range on things, so that's good. We'll do lamb. We'll do
bring
it.
Bubbles.
Oh. Okay, as a deal. Loads of love and thank you for this. Really beautiful. Thank you. Isn't Helen a courageous woman? What a fabulous conversation. It's no wonder she inspires so many to reach into the unknown bravely. Much food for thought. And just know a lot of what she's talking about, or what she talked about, I should say, is really going to ring in my ears for weeks to come. And hoping you found something for yourself too. Next week, I'm joined by an intriguing guest, and her name is Emma Van Heusen. She's an agency owner, she's an author and a Facebook ad expert. Now, Emma seems to have come out of nowhere and established herself as someone to help us be a 6-figure success. Emma's episode is called Net, and we'll be talking reinvention, bit of a theme here, eh? Facebook ads, 6 figures, and a whole lot more because, do you know what? I'm going to confess something. I'm pretty curious about this newish preoccupation with 6-figure success. I've got a bucket full of questions about how women make overnight 6-figure success. It's the overnight I'm wondering about. Hope it doesn't get too challenging, this conversation, because I do have some kind of slightly skeptical Thoughts? I'll just leave it at that. But before I let you go, have you subscribed to this podcast? We're going to feature bonuses that we won't always announce on social media, and I'm suspecting you'll want to hear about those. And in order for you to never miss an episode, especially our new Sunday supplement series, or rather episodes, make sure you subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. By subscribing, you'll be joining a crew of international listeners across more than 40 countries. Oh no, I've just embellished. It's not 40, it's 35. Hey, wishful thinking. Probably by the time soon it will be 40. Gosh, my nose will be growing, won't it? Anyhow, that's it till next week. Same time, same place. Meet me here. Thank you for joining us again. Here's to you.
Thank you for tuning in to the School for Mothers podcast. To continue the conversation and keep your dose of inspiration up, head over to schoolformothers.com/podcast, where you'll find bonus content from Danusha and her guests on habits, recommendations, books, best apps, time-saving secrets, life hacks, health, sleep and anything in between. That's schoolformothers.com/podcast.